After the Bills took down the Dolphins tonight on Sunday Night Football, the stage is set. The playoffs are ready. We know the picture. We know the playoff picture. It is set. The matchups are set. The games are set. The times are set. It's time for NFL playoffs. Listen, man, this was a great game. Bills versus Dolphins. There was a lot of great games today, I thought. It really came down to the wire, but the NFL could not have drawn up the playoff matchups any better. And I have a video on this channel that says the NFL is rigged. Mostly, it was a little bit hyperbolic because of betting lines conveniently working out. I believe that was the week that the Chiefs ended up beating the Jets, but Patrick Mahomes at the end of the game slid down to cover the line for the Jets to cover the line instead of scoring the touchdown after the Jets made a miraculous comeback in that game. But in some ways, this scenario almost would prove that more than I was mostly joking about in that video, right? If there's anything the NFL would want to rig games for, it's to ensure matchups have storylines. And I think that's something sports do so well is ensuring matchups have storylines. We see it in the NBA all the time, right? The drama. I mean, the first thing that comes to my head as a Nets fan is Embiid versus Ben Simmons, right? And that whole situation and them not liking each other. And then James Harden gets there and he ends up falling out with Philly. And there's just storylines on storylines on storylines. That's what's going to be here for the first week of the NFL playoffs in wild card weekend, super wild card weekend, as they call it. So the Bills end up staying ahead of the Dolphins, which I'll talk about in a little bit. You know what? I'll start with that actually. The Bills won 21-14 tonight. I loved the NFL putting this game on Sunday Night Football. Winner takes the division, loser ends up as a wild card. There was a chance that if the Bills lost and some other games worked out the way they did, that they would be eliminated from the playoffs, but that didn't happen. So they knew going into the game that they were going to be in the playoffs either way. Both teams knew. But the winner still won the division, and that's big because you go from the 2th seed hosting the 7th seed down to what, the 6th seed. I believe there's even a chance they could be the 7th seed. No, I'm sorry, they would have been the 7th seed if they tied. I believe Buffalo would have been the 6th seed, but if Miami won, I believe the Bills would have been the 7th, and then I believe if Buffalo won, Miami would have been the 6th or 7th. I think 7th. So no, 6th. So it would have been a lot of fun. Because that's what they are now. I don't know why I overthought that. That is what happened. Buffalo did win. A lot of fun going into this one, and I liked it being a standalone game. At the end of the day, the Buffalo Bills were down 14-7 at halftime, and Josh Allen just led a great comeback. He ends the game 30-38 for 359, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, both in the end zone in the first half. Which, by the way, I don't know what Eli Apple is doing. Why, if you catch an interception and you look up and you don't see green grass and a way to get 50 yards down the field, just sit down. He carries the ball out to the 2-yard line and then gets tackled. What? Just take the touchback and move on. I don't get it. But anyway, so Josh Allen goes 30-38 for 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, along with 15 carries for 67 yards on the ground. And even though the Buffalo Bills have been more running focused since firing their offensive coordinator and letting Joe Brady take over the play calls, I'll talk about in a little bit, Josh Allen's still that guy. And I love James Cook. I think he's worthy of the Pro Bowl. Leonard Fournette, I think, is going to be a sneaky, solid mid-season ad for them. I know he's on the practice squad for a while, but he's really a great change of pace back. He knows what he's doing. He's been there before, right? Played with Super Bowl champions. I believe he won the Super Bowl with Tampa Bay. Veteran guy who's still got some juice in those legs. And then you got Ty Johnson also there as an option, but I'm not a huge fan of him from his Jets days. But anyway, that's not my point here. More of my point, nothing against Ty Johnson, by the way, if he ever watches this video. More of my point is that even though the running backs are talented, and I like the fact that Joe Brady is running the ball more than they did under previous offensive coordinator. I forget his name off the top of my head. Josh Allen's still the guy who you want to be your leading rusher, in my opinion. And sometimes he's going to get hurt because of it, but he's a big guy. He's John Elway-like, as they compared on the broadcast, but even bigger. But the ability for him to scramble out of the pocket, the design runs I don't love, but the ability for him to scramble out of the pocket and just make plays, right? There was first downs that he got on the basis of his legs and his escapability, even for his size, to be able to get out of the pocket, get to the outside, and then make a play on it. It reminds me in some capacity what the Giants fans, not to pick on the Giants here, but hoped Daniel Jones would turn into. Is because Daniel Jones has a similar ability to get to the outside, but he, one, can't stay healthy, and two, isn't that great of a passer. Josh Allen's an elite quarterback. He's a top 3 passer in this league, in my opinion. And you add in that rushing ability, it just makes Buffalo unstoppable. And now with the more balanced offense with James Cook and Leonard Fournette to a lesser extent getting involved, I love it. I love it. I love it. Khalil Shakir ended the game with 6 receptions for 105 yards. He had a 46-yard reception there that really boosted the Bills offense, and been looking for speed, really. I like Stephon Diggs a lot. He's fast, certainly, but he's not like a burner, right? I don't think of him as a burner. I think of him as an exceptionally talented route runner, great hands, and he's got speed. He definitely does. He's all around wide receiver, just not a burner, not a big size guy, just a real great receiver in the fullest sense of the word. Khalil Shakir's got that speed, and they saw it tonight on that play. He caught all 6 of his targets, which I thought was important as well. Diggs ended up with 7 receptions for 87 yards, which is still solid. In previous weeks, he's been struggling. That was a good performance from him. Dalton Kincaid had really one of his better games as a pro. I know he's a rookie, but he had 84 yards himself. And then Trent Sherfield and Dawson Knox both ended up catching a touchdown. Listen, this game was not an exceptional one. And they also had the punt return touchdown. This game was not an exceptional one by Baltimore's offense, but they came back and made plays where they needed it. Give credit to Joe Brady. He's a guy that lost his job when Matt Rule was fired in Carolina, and there was a lot of critiques, right? And those teams were quarterbacked by Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold and the ghost of Cam Newton. I think Joe Brady deserves some more respect, and we see that with Buffalo. I don't think he'll get head coaching opportunities anytime soon, but at least for this season. But I think he comes back next year, and people are going to start to look at him as one of the better offensive coordinators in the league if Buffalo continues to improve as the playoffs go on and as next year goes on. Josh Allen also had a fumble, so that's 3 total takeaways for the Dolphins defense. I'd be curious to see how much Allen limits that in the postseason. That's one thing about him. He is a little bit reckless, not only with his body, but with the ball. And I mean, the takeaway was it was a better play by the Dolphins defense than a poor play by him. But the 2 interceptions, a little rough. At the end of the day, they're going against, who are they going against? And they're the 2nd seed. They're going against the Steelers next week. And the Steelers defense is what buoys them, although probably without TJ Watt. We'll see. We'll see. On the Dolphins side, the story of the game, in my opinion, was Tua's turnovers. He finished the game 17-27 for 173 and a touchdown, 2 interceptions. Devon Achane also had a touchdown on the ground, 56 yards. Tyreek Hill had 82 yards and a touchdown. At the end of the day, their offense wasn't elite. The Buffalo defense handled them, and I know that's partly because of injuries, right? Jalen Waddle was hurt. Raheem Mostert's hurt. Several offensive linemen are hurt. Tyreek Hill ended up leaving the game because of injury at the last play, and that last interception was in large part because Tyreek Hill wasn't in the game. Because I know it was a bad throw by Tua. It was a bad play. Just throwing into double coverage on Chase Claypool. I don't know. I mean, maybe that was the only option in the play. I don't know. You know, I'm not a X's and O's football fan. Maybe Mike McDaniel drew it up to where Tua wasn't even thinking about it and was just throwing. I don't know. But at the end of the day, when you're swapping in Tyreek Hill for Chase Claypool, I don't know who was responsible for the ball going there, but it shouldn't have gone there, especially in double coverage. And if Tyreek Hill was in, maybe he catches up to that defender and makes a play on the ball. He's not in. It ends up costing them. Tua's had a sneaky, decent season from the passing yards perspective, from the touchdowns perspective. Has a completion percentage of 69.6 this year. But 12 interceptions. I believe that's coming into tonight. It doesn't say here. Let me see if I can find it. 16 games. Is that 13 fumbles? Oh no, that's rushing. There's no way he's. Oh no, it's Miami as a whole. Oh my gosh, for a second there I thought 13 fumbles is crazy. Passing, 12 interceptions in 16 games, and he had 2 more tonight. 14 interceptions is quite a few. I think that might be leading the NFL. Trevor Lawrence might lead the NFL. I'm not sure. Trevor Lawrence is another guy who struggled with interceptions, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But he really needs to limit those mistakes. I think he's a very good quarterback. I think he's better than people give him credit for. With the talent level around him, he needs to let them eat. I think he I just wonder about his decision making overall. When he's got the quick timing plays from Mike McDaniel, I love it. I think he's able to throw a deep ball better than most people give him credit for. But at the end of the day, when he's making the major decisions in the play, I'm just a little nervous about it. But we'll see how they match up against Kansas City. That's going to be a fun Tyreek Hill revenge game. And I started this talking about the playoff matchups, and the NFL could not have drawn it up any better. They could not have drawn it up any better. So I mentioned Buffalo's hosting the Steelers. That's an okay matchup, right? Whatever. No one thinks anything of that. I don't love that the Steelers made the playoffs in the first place. But anyway, it's not the point here. Point here is number 3 Kansas City Chiefs hosting number 6 Miami Dolphins. So Tyreek Hill's return home to Kansas City. You'll remember he didn't play against Kansas City, I believe, this year, if I'm not mistaken. And then the 4 seed Texans host the 5 seed Browns. Of course, the Deshaun Watson saga looms large here. The Texans, the 4 seed, win the AFC South because of the Jaguars collapse. And the Jaguars, I mean, all-time poor performance. I think we have to have a serious conversation about Trevor Lawrence and the turnovers here, and whether something needs to be done about the offensive coaching staff to try to make a difference there. But the Jaguars collapse was just incredible against the Titans. Tennessee goes in and wins that game. I made a video a couple days ago, or maybe it was yesterday, I don't remember, about how I would almost guarantee that the Jaguars win the game against the Titans because I don't think the Titans have enough to play for. And boy, was I wrong. Jaguars go and make me look like an idiot. But nonetheless, anyway, Texans win that division. Big win against Indy. I already talked about that in a video. You can check that out on the channel. Most recent video on the channel. Quick thoughts. Number 31, I believe. But they host the Browns, having traded Deshaun Watson to the Browns. The Browns playing him getting playing poorly and then getting hurt. Joe Flacco takes over eventually after a slew of quarterbacks come in, right? Orion Thompson Robinson. Who else played for them? Was it Jeff Driscoll? Was that who else played for them this year? I can't remember. But Joe Flacco comes in and he leads them to a really solid playoff spot. And they're going into Houston. It would be a Deshaun Watson revenge game if he was healthy, but nonetheless, CJ Stroud, the quarterback in Houston, because they decided to move on from Deshaun Watson with the chance to really make his mark in the playoffs in his rookie season. And if they lose, a lot of forward progress for Houston this season. No shame in where they performed. In the same vein, the Browns go to their 4th string quarterback, not a lot to lose either. So I'm excited for that game, and storylines galore through the AFC playoffs. And then you go over to the NFC, right? The Cowboys won the division by beating Washington today and lucking into the win against the Lions via referee confusion and situational football. They end up as the 2 seed, and they're hosting the Packers as the 7th seed. Packers get in behind a great performance from Jordan Love. I think he's clearly the future at quarterback in Green Bay. And you get Mike McCarthy hosting in Dallas, his former team in the Green Bay Packers. Storylines galore. Then you look at the matchup because of the aforementioned Lions getting the 3 seed. They face the 6 seed Los Angeles Rams, who, by the way, would not have had the 6 seed if they hadn't won the game against San Francisco today. And they were behind. They mounted a comeback with Carson Wentz at quarterback because they sat Matthew Stafford because they were guaranteed a playoff spot. And the Rams come back. They win the game against the 49ers for the first time in 5.5 years. They get the 6th seed. And as a result, we have a Matthew Stafford versus Jared Goff, the 2 franchise quarterbacks that were traded for one another several years ago before the Rams went on to win the Super Bowl. Matt Stafford returning to Detroit, where he spent years and years of his career wasted because Detroit couldn't put talent around him. They trade him away, and it fuels their rebuild with Jared Goff at the helm, now hosting the Rams in the playoffs. That's going to be the best game for storyline purposes. If we're breaking them down, I mean, I love the Mike McCarthy angle. I love the Tyreek revenge game angle. I love the Deshaun Watson trade angle. I don't love the Steelers and Bills matchup. But at the end of the day, this is the matchup for the storylines. Matt Stafford returning home to Detroit to face the Rams, to face the Lions with his new team, the LA Rams, and Jared Goff, a possible revenge game against the team that traded him, moved on from him, and ended up better because of it. I love it. I just love the storylines here. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And then the last matchup, the Buccaneers and the Eagles. Listen, I would love to try to hype this up. I don't. There's not a lot to hype up here. Buccaneers, sure, they won the NFC South. They're 9-8. Okay, cool. The worst division in football by far. And they host the Eagles, who will probably beat the crap out of them, and we'll move on to next week. But that matchup is interesting just because the Eagles sunk so low. I mean, let me pull it up. I bookmarked a tweet because I found it interesting. Let me see if I can find it quickly. About the Eagles this season. Eagles before December 1st, 10-1, best record in the NFL. Eagles since December 1st, 1-5, second worst record in the NFL. Once again, before December 1st, 10-1, best record in the NFL. Since December 1st, 1-5, second worst record in the NFL. They went from the best team in football to the second worst team in football in just a matter of a few weeks. And I don't want to say that they're not the second worst team in football, obviously. They're still a quality playoff team. But at the end of the day, they've been shown to be suspect. That defensive backfield, was not good today and has not been good all season. I think they're definitely going to draft the defensive back in the draft, in my opinion. The defense has just not performed all the way through. Guys up front like Jalen Carter and who am I forgetting? I always forget him. Very big guy, Jordan Davis, have not progressed like they thought they would, I think, up front. And at the end of the day, I think losing both coordinators probably hurts a little bit. Jalen Hurts is a little more passive and not trusting the offensive line, it seems. So I think they're a suspect playoff team, but I think they're going to beat the Buccaneers pretty easily. I don't know that that's going to be that great of a game. Hopefully it's a get-right game if you're Philadelphia or if you're one of their fans, because that's going to be the best opportunity to do that. I bookmarked another tweet, but I don't think it ended up being relevant. No, it's not. It was in case the Bills lost. But a lot of fun football games this week. My Jets finally ended the streak versus the Patriots, which was my favorite outcome of this week. If you're a Jets fan and you're watching this, we made it, man. I know a lot of people wanted the Jets to lose, but at the end of the day, for draft position, obviously, but at the end of the day, you beat Bill Belichick in what's possibly his final game as head coach and GM of the New England Patriots. You end the streak against the Patriots, which was like 15 losses in a row or something like that. You love it as a Jets fan. I love it as a Jets fan. I think some interesting things that came out of today are also relevant to draft order. The Giants dropped down to 6, which I think makes things interesting. I'm not sold that Washington's not interested in the quarterback. Chicago looks like they're probably going to take a quarterback. Justin Fields didn't perform all too well today. If they move on from him, there could go Caleb Williams and Drake May 1 and 2, and New England has a third pick. Maybe they go Jaden Daniels, and all of a sudden, if you're the Giants, you're looking at the best quarterback being the 4th taken in the draft. And maybe Bo Nix ends up being the best guy in the draft, or Michael Penix or JJ McCarthy, whoever it ends up being. But at the end of the day, a couple of weeks ago, you were in the 3rd pick, and you probably wish you lost the game versus Philly today. But a lot of interesting storylines. I'm going to be doing regular mock drafts on this channel, so subscribe if you haven't already. I'm going to try to do mock draft Mondays every week, but we'll see how it goes. I want to do one where Justin Fields ends up getting traded to Washington, because I think that'll be interesting, with Chicago having the 1st pick and taking, I assume, a quarterback, obviously, in that case, Caleb Williams probably, and then Washington have the 2nd pick. You probably draft Marvin Harrison Jr. You give Justin Fields Marvin Harrison Jr. and Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel. I think that's an interesting offense. I don't think it ends up being anything special, especially if they can't figure out the offensive line. But if there's a quarterback to handle a bad offensive line, Justin Fields is certainly one of those guys. So stay tuned for those on the channel. I'm going to try to do them pretty regularly throughout the offseason as we lead up into the draft. But there's playoff football on the horizon, and I love it. I'm excited for it. I'm excited for these matchups. Let me know what you think of these matchups and these games today and yesterday in the comments below. I appreciate all the support on the channel. We had a mock draft recently pop off, 3K views on the channel as of recently, which my most viewed video on this channel was like 1.7K. So I really appreciate all the support. Check that video out. It's live on the channel. I already got plenty of mock drafts on the channel, plenty of NFL coverage. I appreciate all the support. Thank you for watching this Quick Thoughts episode. I hope you enjoyed. Peace out.